Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back to the deep dive. Learning English, it often feels like you hit this wall, right? Especially when you're trying to understand native speakers talking really fast, or maybe when you want to speak more naturally yourself. And probably the most common advice you get is, oh, just, watch movies and TV shows.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect solution, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
the most fun homework ever. Just sit back, binge your favorite series, and somehow magically absorb English. But the reality for a lot of learners is it doesn't quite work like that. Simply watching, even if you got the subtitles on, it doesn't automatically train your ears for that fast speech
Hmm.
or build that confidence to actually speak.
Absolutely. I hear that all the time. People spending hours watching shows, maybe glued to the subtitles in their own language or even English ones. And
Yeah.
yeah, they pick up a word here and there maybe, but then they hear real life English like out in the wild, and it's
Yeah.
still just noise, a frustrating blur. The words all just seem to kind of mush together. And then trying to speak themselves feels, I don't know, slow or clunky compared to the actors they're hearing.
That gap is huge, isn't it? The gap between, say, understanding written English or maybe very slow, careful speech,
Mm.
and then processing that rapid-fire, everyday conversational English or trying to produce it yourself. It's a major hurdle. And just passively watching. It's enjoyable, sure, but it doesn't give you the specific training you need to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
It's a bit like trying to become a concert pianist just by listening to loads of classical music. You actually have to practice the piano, right?
Right. You need the hands-on practice. And it feels like you have this amazing resource. I mean, millions of hours of real English dialogue online, but without a clear method, it's just hard to really use it effectively for, serious improvement. You feel like you should be learning more than you are.
Precisely. And that's really what we want to tackle in this deep dive. We've looked through the source material you gave us, and it lays out a really practical step-by-step strategy. We're going to show you how to shift from just watching to actively using movies and shows, using them as powerful tools to seriously boost both your listening skills for that fast English and also your own speaking fluency and naturalness.
Okay, so like a proper guide, not just watch more, but how to watch more effectively. We're talking figuring out which shows are actually right for your specific level, because that seems pretty key.
Foundational, yeah.
Then getting into some real techniques to train your ears,
Yeah.
to actually decode that fast connected speech, which, let's be honest, is probably the biggest headache for most learners.
Definitely a big one.
And clarifying how to use subtitles the right way so they're helping, not just acting as a crutch.
Hmm.
And finally, looking at how you can actually use this stuff watching shows to practice your speaking.
Yeah, think of this as us handing you the remote control, but also the instruction manual for learning English effectively through entertainment. We're turning your sofa into a classroom,
Hmm.
but, a fun one.
I like that, making movie night actually productive. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. Choosing the right stuff to watch. It's easy to think, oh, anything will do, right? But you're saying that's maybe not the best approach.
That's exactly what the source material highlights. Look, any exposure is obviously better than zero exposure. But if your goal is real, structured improvement, just randomly picking, say, a really complex sci-fi movie with loads of jargon or a drama with super fast overlapping dialogue, especially if you're not at an advanced level yet, it can actually be counterproductive.
Okay, why is that? What happens if maybe I'm like an upper beginner and I decide I'm going to learn English by watching, I don't know, The Wire or something?
You're probably going to feel completely swamped almost instantly. The vocabulary will be too specific, maybe too much slang you don't know, the sentence structures might be really complex, the accents could be difficult, and the speaking speed, way too fast.
Right.
You'll spend all your brain power just trying to figure out the absolute basics of what's happening, maybe looking up every other word. And you just won't have any mental bandwidth left to actually learn the language patterns or enjoy it. Frustration builds up really fast, and chances are you'll just give up on the whole idea. It feels like banging your head against a wall.
Okay, that makes total sense. Avoid the overwhelm. And I guess the flip side is also true. Picking something too easy isn't great either.
Exactly right. If you pick something, maybe a kid's show you watched when you were younger, where you understand, say, 95% or even 100% of everything, well, you're not really stretching yourself, are you?
You're just coasting.
You're coasting. You're not encountering enough new words or new grammatical structures or hearing those faster, more natural speech patterns that you need to get used to. It's comfortable, sure, but comfort doesn't usually lead to much progress in language learning. Learning really happens at that edge, just beyond what you already know.
So finding that sweet spot, that's the goal. Challenging, but achievable.
Precisely.
So how do we find it? Does the source give us some pointers based on level?
Yes, it breaks it down quite nicely. It gives suggestions for types of content and even specific examples for beginner, intermediate, and advanced learners. It's a really helpful starting point.
Okay, let's walk through that. What about beginners, someone just starting out or maybe feeling stuck at that lower level? What should they look for?
For beginners, the absolute keys are clarity and simplicity. So the source strongly recommends animated movies. Think about the Disney or Pixar classics like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, maybe Frozen.
Why animation specifically?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, the voice actors in these big animated films. They usually speak with incredibly clear pronunciation. It's often part of the direction. Second, the dialogue itself tends to be less complex. Shorter sentences, more common vocabulary. And the storylines are usually pretty straightforward and visually supported. So even if you miss some words, you can often follow along just by watching the pictures. It's often aimed at kids, right? Which means the language is designed to be understood easily. That translates really well for beginner English learners who need that clear, comprehensible input.
Makes perfect sense. Clear sounds, simple stories, visual help. What else works for beginners?
Sitcoms, especially ones focused on everyday life and conversations. Shows like Friends are a classic recommendation, or maybe Modern Family.
Right, I hear Friends recommended all the time.
And for good reason. While the speech might be a bit faster than animation sometimes, the context is super relatable. It's about daily life, work, friendships, dating, stuff everyone experiences. The language is conversational, focusing on common situations, and you often get repetition of phrases or catchphrases, which helps them stick.
So even though it's real actors, not animation, the type of conversation and the familiar settings make it accessible.
Exactly. It's generally realistic dialogue, but it stays within a fairly limited, understandable world. You're not suddenly dealing with, complex medical or legal jargon. And if even Friends feels a bit too fast at the very beginning, the source also points towards shows with really short, super simple episodes. Think about programs for very young children like Peppa Pig or Bluey.
Oh, interesting, like actual kids' TV.
Yeah. The language in these is absolutely fundamental. Basic vocabulary, simple present tense verbs, clear questions and answers about everyday things, like, where is the ball? The ball is red. Plus, the episodes are super short, maybe 5 or 7 minutes, so you can watch one, maybe rewatch it easily, without needing a huge time commitment. It really helps reinforce those basic building blocks.
Okay, so the big takeaways for beginners are: look for clear pronunciation, simple vocabulary and grammar, relatable situations, and maybe shorter formats.
That's the core idea. Keep it manageable and build confidence.
Got it. So what about intermediate learners? They're past the absolute basics. They know some grammar, some vocab, but maybe understanding natural speed is still tough, or they want more complex language.
Right. For intermediate learners, you're ready to handle speech that flows more naturally. The source suggests moving into TV dramas, but maybe ones that focus more on character interactions and conversations, rather than heavy plot twists or technical stuff. Examples given include shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office. The U.S. version is often mentioned.
Okay, comedies, but with more workplace or group dynamics.
Exactly. The dialogue in shows like these is definitely more realistic than beginner content. You'll hear more common idioms, maybe some light slang, cultural references you'd actually encounter. The pace is faster, closer to natural speech, but the overall plots are usually pretty easy to follow, even if you miss a few lines here and there. The humor often comes from the characters and situations.
So you're stepping up the realism of the language, getting more natural flow, but the context keeps it from being totally overwhelming.
That's the idea. You're stretching your listening skills in a supported way. Light comedies in general are good here, too. Things like The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother are often suggested.
Right, more ensemble comedies.
Yeah. The humor might sometimes depend on understanding wordplay or specific cultural things, which is good practice in itself. But the main conversations about relationships, work, hanging out, use very common, everyday language structures. You get exposed to more varied sentence types and definitely a faster conversational rhythm compared to beginner shows.
I can see how listening to those kinds of back-and-forth conversations would be great for picking up common phrases, reaction words, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And another interesting category mentioned for intermediates is reality TV.
Really, like competition shows.
Yeah, things like MasterChef or the Great British Bake Off, or even shows like Queer Eye.
Why reality TV? Isn't that sometimes a bit unstructured?
Well, that's actually part of the benefit. While there's obviously some specific vocabulary related to the show's theme, cooking terms, design terms, whatever, a huge amount of the dialogue is unscripted, spontaneous conversation. You hear people genuinely expressing frustration or excitement, asking questions on the fly, describing things as they happen. It's messy sometimes.
Ah, so it's authentic speech, maybe more so than scripted dramas.
Exactly. It's unrehearsed. You hear the pauses, the ums and ahs, the way people might restart sentences,
Mhm.
which is fantastic training for your ear to understand English, as it's really spoken by everyday people, not just polished actors delivering lines.
Okay, I hadn't thought of it that way. So for intermediates, more natural flow, relatable contexts like work or social life, maybe some authentic unscripted speech.
That sums it up well, stepping into more complexity, but still within reach.
Right. So what about advanced learners, people who are pretty comfortable but want to really push themselves, understand everything, maybe refine their accent?
For advanced learners, the goal is really exposure to the full range of English.
Mm.
We're talking very fast speech, complex ideas, diverse accents, sophisticated vocabulary, nuance, subtext, the whole package. This is where you can really dive into movies known for their dense, rapid-fire dialogue. The source mentions examples like Inception or The Social Network.
Oh, yeah, those are definitely fast-talking movies.
Absolutely. The characters often speak incredibly quickly. The conversations are packed with information, sometimes technical jargon or complex arguments. They might use intricate sentence structures. It's a serious listening workout.
I bet. Even some native speakers might need subtitles for parts of those. What else is good for advanced learners?
News programs and documentaries are excellent. They help you expand your vocabulary into more formal or academic areas. Watching something like BBC News gives you exposure to standard British English and reporting language. TED Talks are fantastic because you get experts discussing complex topics using sophisticated vocabulary and well-structured arguments.
And you get loads of different topics and accents with TED Talks, too.
Exactly. Science, tech, social issues, psychology, you name it. You hear different speaking styles, formal registers, and language specific to various fields. Great for broadening your range.
What about dramas for advanced learners, more complex ones?
Definitely. TV dramas that are known for their sophisticated writing and intricate plots are perfect. Think Breaking Bad, or Sherlock, or maybe political dramas like The West Wing.
Okay, shows where the language itself is really doing a lot of work.
Precisely. The dialogue often carries subtext, irony, complex cultural references. There might be specialized vocabulary chemistry in Breaking Bad, deduction in Sherlock. Characters might have distinct regional accents or switch between formal and informal language, depending on the situation. Understanding these requires a high level of both linguistic skill and cultural awareness.
So the benefit here is really pushing your comprehension to the limit, tackling challenging language, understanding those finer shades of meaning, and getting used to diverse styles.
Exactly. It's about engaging with the language at its most complex and varied.
Okay, this breakdown by level is super helpful, beginner, intermediate, advanced,
Wow.
with concrete examples. But how do you know for sure if a specific show is hitting that sweet spot for you personally? Is there like a quick test you can do?
Yes, there is. The source offers a really practical rule of thumb. It's pretty simple. Find a short clip of the show or movie you're considering, maybe just a minute or two. Watch it without any subtitles at all. Just listen. If you can understand roughly 50% to 70% of what's being said on that first listen, it's probably a good fit for your current learning level.
Ah, okay. 50 to 70%. Why that specific range?
Well, think about it. If you understand less than 50%, say only 20 or 30%, it's likely too difficult. You'll just be guessing constantly, probably feeling lost, needing to look up way too many words. You won't have enough known language to anchor yourself and learn from the context. It leads straight back to that frustration we talked about.
Right, too much unknown just feels like noise.
Exactly. On the other hand, if you understand significantly more than 70%, let's say 85%, 90%, or even higher, it's probably a bit too easy for active learning. You're not encountering enough new challenges, not enough unfamiliar vocabulary or complex grammar or those tricky pronunciation features that you need practice with. You're staying in your comfort zone.
So that 50-70% zone, it means there's enough you do understand to follow along and feel grounded. But there's also a good chunk, that 30 to 50% that's new and challenging, pushing you to learn and figure things out from context.
Precisely. It's that ideal learning zone, often called the comprehensible input plus one zone by linguists. Enough known stuff to make sense of it, plus just enough new stuff to keep you learning and growing. Not so hard, it's demotivating. Not so easy, it's stagnant.
That 50-70% rule is brilliant, really practical, takes the guesswork out. So, okay, listener, maybe take a moment now. Think about a show you like, or one of the examples we mentioned. Could you try that 50-70% test next time you watch? Choosing the right content is step one. But even with the perfect show picked out, we come back to that big monster, understanding fast, natural English.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road for so many learners, that feeling of, I learned English in school, but I can't understand native speakers. And it's because, well, classroom English, or even the English in beginner materials, is often spoken much more slowly and deliberately. Each word is pronounced clearly.
Like reading from a script very carefully.
Exactly. But native speakers in movies, TV shows, or just talking in real life, they don't do that. They connect words, they reduce sounds, they use rhythm and intonation in ways that make speech efficient and fast.
It really does sound like a totally different language sometimes. You learn the phrase going to, but what you actually hear is gonna.
Right.
Or you learn want to and you hear wanna. Or kind of becomes kinda. Sort of becomes sorta. And it all happens so quickly.
And it's not just those common contractions like gonna or wanna. It's a broader phenomenon called connected speech. It happens naturally when words flow together in sentences. Sounds at the end of one word often influence or merge with sounds at the beginning of the next word.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Think about the phrase cup of tea. We don't usually say cup of tea with clear breaks. The P sound at the end of cup might link onto the O of. And the word of itself often gets reduced to just a very weak sound, or sometimes it almost disappears. So it comes out sounding more like cup of tea.
Cup of tea. Yeah, okay, I definitely hear that. So it's not just about speed, it's about the actual sounds changing and linking up.
Exactly. Another super common pattern is when a word ends in a consonant sound and the next word starts with a vowel sound. That consonant sound often jumps over and links to the vowel. Think of an apple. We don't say an apple. It sounds like one smooth word. An apple. The in connects.
Ah, right.
Or pick it up. It becomes pick it up.
Pick it up, yeah.
And another interesting one is when two sounds blend together to make a new sound. Like when a word ends in a day sound, like did, and the next word starts with a Y sound, like you. That ed and yi often merge to create a J sound. So did you go frequently sounds like did you go.
Did you go?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, you hear that constantly. I never consciously thought about it as the deed and yo making a J. That's fascinating.
It's just a natural phonetic process that makes speech smoother and faster for native speakers. But for learners, if you're listening for did you go, pronounced perfectly.
You're going to miss D-yo completely.
Exactly. Your brain is trying to match the sounds it hears to the dictionary forms of the words it knows, and there's a mismatch. It can't process it fast enough.
Okay, this is hitting the nail on the head. The sound of words physically changes in fast, natural speech. So how on earth do we train our ears to actually recognize these patterns, these reductions, this connected speech, and process that speed?
Well, the good news is you can train your ears. The source material provides a really effective, focused, 3-step listening exercise designed specifically for this. The key is intensive, repetitive work on very short chunks of audio.
Okay, I'm ready. Focused and repetitive. What's step one?
Step 1. Choose a very short clip from your movie or TV show. And I mean short. The source suggests around 10 to 15 seconds maximum.
Just 10, 15 seconds. Okay.
Yep. Listen to this clip without any subtitles at all. First time through, the goal isn't necessarily to understand everything perfectly. It's more about just exposing your ear to the raw sounds, the natural speed, the rhythm, the intonation. Just listen. Try to catch any individual words or short phrases that maybe sound familiar. But don't panic about what you miss. This is just your baseline listening pass.
Okay, so first pass. No subtitles, just listen passively, see what my ear picks up naturally. Got it. What's step 2?
Step 2 is where the analysis happens. Listen to that exact same 10 to 15 second clip again. But this time, turn the English subtitles on.
So now I can see the actual words being spoken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where you connect the sounds you heard in step 1, which might have sounded like a blur, to the written text on the screen. This is crucial for noticing that connected speech. As you read, what do you want to do tonight, while simultaneously hearing, what do you want to do tonight? Your brain starts to make the connection.
So you see the formal written version and you hear the casual connected spoken version at the same time. It links them.
Precisely. You're consciously observing those transformations. You see going to, written, but you hear gonna. You see did you hear did you see kind of, you hear kinda. This step is all about building awareness of how native speakers actually change and link sounds when they speak naturally and quickly. You might even want to pause it right after a tricky phrase and rewind just a second or two, listening specifically to how, say, two words blend together smoothly.
That feels really targeted. You're not just reading the subtitles for meaning anymore. You're using them as a tool to analyze the sound of the fast speech.
That is the absolute key, using the text to understand the sound. Then comes step 3.
Okay, so step 3 is listen again, but without the subtitles this time.
You got it. Listen to that same short clip for a third time, subtitles off again. Now, the goal is to test your comprehension based purely on listening. Can you now recognize those words and phrases, including those connected speech patterns you just analyzed in step 2, without the visual aid of the text? Can you actually hear what I wanna or did you go now, knowing what they represent?
Okay, so it's like raw sound exposure, analyze sound with test recognition of sound without text. It's a cycle.
Exactly. And the source stresses that you should repeat this 3-step cycle. Listen without, listen with, listen without. Again, for the same short clip as many times as you need to until you feel you can understand most, or ideally all, of that 10-15-second chunk just by listening.
It might feel a bit repetitive, focusing so intensely on such a tiny piece of audio.
It can, yeah.
But I can totally see how doing that deep, focused work on a small segment would build the underlying skill. It trains your ear to notice those patterns, which you can then apply when listening to longer stretches later on.
It's exactly like building muscle memory. You do focused reps with smaller weights before you can lift the heavy ones. Doing this regularly, even if it's just for, say, 10-15 minutes a day with a couple of different clips, will make a huge difference to your ability to understand fast, natural English over time. It starts turning that confusing blur of sound into something your brain can actually process.
That's genuinely encouraging. It gives you a concrete method to tackle that fast speech problem. Okay, so we've got choosing the right content in this brilliant 3-step method for ear training. Now let's circle back to subtitles more generally. We used English subtitles in step 2 there, but how should we use them overall? Because I know a ton of learners just rely on subtitles in their native language all the time.
And that, as the source material points out, is probably the biggest mistake if your goal is to improve your listening skills. Look, native language subtitles are great for understanding the plot, especially if the English is really difficult for you. They let you enjoy the movie or show, but they almost completely bypass the English listening practice. Your brain naturally takes the path of least resistance, and reading in your own language is way easier than decoding spoken English.
So you end up just reading the translation, not actually listening to the English.
Pretty much. You're engaging your reading skills in your native language, not your listening skills in English. It's fine for entertainment, but not effective for learning to understand spoken English.
Okay, so rule number 1. Ditch the native language subtitles if your goal is improving English listening. What about English subtitles? Can they also become a crutch?
They absolutely can. If you always watch everything with English subtitles turned on, you risk falling into the trap of just reading the English text instead of truly listening to and processing the sounds. Your eyes are doing the heavy lifting, not your ears.
Right, you're reading comprehension, not listening comprehension. So how do we use English subtitles strategically as a learning tool, not just a crutch?
The source outlines a really effective method that leverages them properly. It builds on what we discussed in the ear training exercise. Step 1, watch a section of the show, maybe a scene, or even just a few minutes with the English subtitles turned on first.
Okay, starting with the support. Why?
For a few key reasons. As we saw in the ear training, this helps you clearly connect the written word to the way it actually sounds in natural speech. You see want to, you hear wanta. You see because, you might hear cuz. It reinforces that link between spelling and pronunciation, especially with all those connected speech features.
And it helps with new words too, right? You see it written, hear it used in context.
Absolutely. You can see the spelling, hear the pronunciation, and understand the meaning from the situation all at once. It's a fantastic way to learn vocabulary naturally. You can even pause and look up a word if you need to. So this first viewing with English subs is about building that foundation, connecting sound to text, understanding the content, picking up new words.
Got it. Supported viewing first. What's step 2?
Step 2, watch that exact same section or scene again, but this time, turn the English subtitles off.
Okay. Removing the safety net.
Exactly. Now that you've already processed the scene with the text support, you know what happens, you've seen the words, you understand the general meaning. This second viewing forces your ears to do the work. You're relying solely on processing the spoken English. It's pure, focused listening practice, where you actively try to recognize the sounds and words you just saw written down.
This really mirrors that three-step listening exercise, but maybe applied to slightly longer chunks of the show. You get the support, then you remove it to test yourself.
Precisely. It's about building your ear's confidence and independence, moving from supported listening to unsupported listening. And then there's often a suggested step 3, which adds an active speaking component: shadowing.
Shadowing again. Okay, explain how that fits in here with subtitles.
So after you've watched with subs, then without subs, you can go back to that same scene, or maybe just pick a few key lines from it. You play a short phrase or sentence, then you pause the video, and you immediately try to repeat that phrase or sentence out loud. The goal is to imitate the speaker's pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation, the whole melody of the sentence as closely as you possibly can.
So I'm not just understanding it, I'm actively trying to reproduce the sound myself, using the actor as a direct model.
That's exactly it. You're trying to copy everything, how they link words, where they put the stress, whether their voice goes up or down at the end, even subtle things like how they pronounce certain vowel sounds.
Let's try a quick one. Listener, listen to this simple phrase. Pay attention to the sound and rhythm. Then, right after, pause and say it out loud trying to copy it. I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Pause for listener to repeat. Good. That physical act of trying to make the sounds yourself really solidifies what you've heard. It connects the listening input to your own speaking output. It helps you feel how your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords need to work to make those English sounds correctly. It builds muscle memory for pronunciation and rhythm.
So this whole cycle, watch with English subs, watch without, then shadow key phrases, turns subtitles from a potential crutch into a really active, multi-stage learning process. It connects listening, reading, and speaking.
Exactly. It's a much more engaged way to learn compared to just passively watching with subtitles always on, or especially subtitles in your own language. You're actively working with the English.
Okay, this is incredibly practical. So we've got choosing content, ear training for fast speech, and using subtitles smartly. But now let's dig a bit deeper into speaking. We touched on shadowing, but how else can just watching TV shows and movies actually help you improve your own spoken English? It still feels mostly like a receptive skill, right? Watching and listening.
That's a totally fair point. And you're right, watching alone isn't going to replace real-life conversation practice with actual people. You definitely need that too. However, the source material makes a strong case that you can use movies and TV shows very effectively for targeted speaking practice, building on the listening and shadowing we've discussed. There are specific exercises you can do.
Okay, tell me more. What kind of speaking exercises can you pull from watching a show?
Well, the first one is shadowing, but maybe taking it a step further, specifically focusing on improving fluency and sounding more like a native speaker.
How is it different from the pausing and repeating we just talked about?
This variation, sometimes called simultaneous shadowing, involves picking a short sentence or maybe even a slightly longer phrase again, maybe 10-15 seconds works well, and you try to speak at the very same time as the character is speaking on screen.
Whoa, hold on. Speaking simultaneously, like talking over them? That sounds really hard.
It is. It's definitely challenging, especially at first. Don't expect to get it perfect right away. But the goal isn't perfect mimicry immediately. The goal is to force yourself to match the character's speed, their rhythm, their pauses, their intonation patterns in real time. You're essentially trying to overlay your voice onto theirs, maybe lagging just a tiny fraction of a second behind, following their lead as closely as possible.
Okay, I'm trying to picture doing that. What does that intense real-time mimicry actually do for your speaking ability?
It's incredibly powerful for training the physical aspect of speaking. It forces your mouth, tongue, jaw, all the muscles involved in speech to move in sync with the natural flow and rhythm of spoken English. You're building muscle memory for how sounds connect, how rhythm works, how intonation flows in longer chunks of speech, not just isolated words.
So it's like high-intensity interval training for your mouth muscles, getting them used to moving quickly and accurately for English sounds.
That's a great analogy, yeah. It helps you break out of maybe slower, more hesitant speech patterns you might have, and forces you to adopt a more native-like pace and fluidity. It directly tackles pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency by making you keep up.
Okay, simultaneous shadowing. Sounds tough, but potentially very effective for fluency and accent. What's
Yeah.
the other speaking exercise mentioned?
The other one is role play.
Role play. Okay, this sounds maybe a bit more interactive, even if you're doing it solo.
It is, in a way. For this, you choose a short conversation scene from your show or movie, something with back and forth dialogue between two or more characters. Then, You pause the video after each line of dialogue is spoken by one character, and you say that character's line out loud yourself. You basically take on the role of one, or maybe even switch between characters.
Thus, I'm essentially acting out the scene, having a conversation with the characters on the screen.
Exactly. You're stepping into the shoes of a character and delivering their lines. The huge benefit here is practicing speaking in context. You're not just repeating random sentences, you're saying something that makes sense as a response or an initiation within a specific conversational situation.
And should I just say the words or try to act it out a bit?
Definitely try to act it out. The source emphasizes trying to match the original character's tone, their emotion, their speed, their intonation. Ask yourself, were they asking a question with that upward inflection? Were they angry, sad, excited, joking? Try to capture that same feeling and intention in your own voice when you deliver the line.
So this exercise helps you practice the expressiveness of English, not just getting the words right, like how to sound friendly or annoyed or curious.
Absolutely. It pushes you beyond just grammatical accuracy and correct vocabulary. It helps you practice how native speakers use pitch, stress, and rhythm to convey meaning, emotion, attitude, and nuance in a real conversational exchange. It builds your confidence in speaking naturally and expressively, making your English sound less flat or robotic. You're practicing the performance aspect of language.
Okay, let's try a quick example of that. Imagine you bump into an old friend you haven't seen for ages. Listen to this friendly greeting. Notice the warm tone and rhythm. Then pause and try saying it yourself, copying that friendly vibe. Hey, long time no see. Pause for listener to repeat.
Nice. Doing exercises like these simultaneous shadowing for the physical fluency and rhythm and role-playing for expressive delivery and context really does provide a fantastic way to turn that passive watching into active speaking practice. It helps bridge that gap between understanding the language and being able to actually produce it confidently and naturally yourself, using the native speakers right there on your screen as your models.
It completely changes how you think about watching TV, doesn't it? It's not just entertainment anymore. It's like a language lab disguised as fun.
It's a script library, a pronunciation guide, an accent coach, and a collection of native speaker conversation partners, all rolled into one. The key is just engaging with it actively, going in with a specific learning goal, whether it's ear training, vocab building, shadowing, or role play.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground today. Hopefully, if you started this feeling frustrated about understanding fast English or maybe hesitant about speaking, you now feel like you have a much clearer path forward using movies and TV shows.
Absolutely. We've tried to take that vague advice of just watch shows and turn it into a really concrete, actionable methodology based on the source material, a system you can actually use.
So just to quickly recap the main pillars we discussed. First, the absolute importance of choosing the right content for your specific level. Remember that 50-70% comprehension rule without subtitles. For beginners, lean towards clarity and simplicity. Animated movies like Toy Story, maybe everyday sitcoms like Friends, or even super simple short shows like Peppa Pig.
For intermediate learners, step it up to more natural conversations. Dramas like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, comedies like The Big Bang Theory, or get authentic speech from reality shows like MasterChef.
And for advanced learners, push your boundaries. Fast dialogue movies like Inception, complex topics in news or TED Talks, or sophisticated dramas like Sherlock.
Second, we dug deep into training your ears for fast connected speech using that focused three-step listening cycle. Listen without subs, then listen with English subs, specifically noticing the links and reductions, like what do y'all wanna. Then listen without subs again to test your improved recognition. Repeat for short clips.
Third, using English subtitles strategically. Watch with them first to connect sound, text, and meaning. Then watch the same part without them for pure listening practice. And then maybe use shadowing to actively mimic the pronunciation and rhythm.
And fourth, turning viewing into speaking practice. Using simultaneous shadowing to build muscle memory for fluency and native-like rhythm, and using role-play acting out scenes to practice delivering lines expressively and confidently in context.
These aren't just vague suggestions, they are specific techniques. And practicing them consistently, even a little bit each day, can genuinely transform your relationship with spoken English. Watching becomes active skill building.
It really puts the power back in your hands, letting you leverage the entertainment you already enjoy for serious language gains.
All right, which brings us to your challenge for today. Time to put this into action.
Yes, take one of these ideas and try it out, maybe right after this or next time you sit down to watch something in English.
Okay, step 1. Choose a really short clip. We keep saying 10-15 seconds because that focused repetition is key according to the source. Pick a line that caught your ear, maybe something funny, dramatic, or just typical sounding.
Step 2. Apply that core 3-step listening exercise. Listen once without any subtitles. Then listen again with English subtitles, paying super close attention to how the spoken sounds match, or don't match. The written words, look for those connections and reductions. Then listen a third time without subtitles. See if you notice a difference in your comprehension.
Step 3. Pick just one sentence or short phrase from that clip. Now try shadowing it. You can pause and repeat it, focusing on mimicry. Or, if you're feeling adventurous, try that simultaneous shadowing attempt to say it right along with the character. Focus on matching their sound and rhythm.
And please, we'd genuinely love to hear how this goes for you. Let us know what movie or TV show clip you picked for your challenge. What part of that process felt hardest? Was it the first listen without support? Noticing the connected speech? Or maybe the shadowing part?
Yeah, tell us, did focusing so intensely on that tiny clip help you notice any new words or phrases or pronunciation details that you might have missed otherwise? Share your experience.
Definitely. Now, looking ahead, we've equipped you with a powerful way to use TV and movies for improving general listening and speaking. But there's another communication scenario that often trips up English learners, one where you lose all those visual cues. And that's making phone calls.
Oh yeah, phone calls in a foreign language can be terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is listening on expert mode, isn't it? You can't see their face, their gestures, you can't even see their lips moving, it's just sound.
Exactly. All you have is the voice coming through the line. Misunderstandings can happen much more easily, and knowing how to handle the situations, how to ask for clarification politely, how to manage the conversation flow, it's a very specific skill set.
So that's what we're tackling in our next deep dive. How to conquer English phone calls.
That's the plan. Based on the source material for next time, we'll be breaking down practical strategies and giving you useful language for making phone calls less stressful and way more successful. We'll cover things like how to start and end calls naturally and politely in different situations. We'll give you key phrases for common tasks like making appointments, asking for information, or maybe dealing with customer service. And crucially, we'll talk about how to handle those moments of panic when you don't understand something or when you need the other person to slow down or repeat themselves.
That sounds incredibly practical and necessary. Definitely a skill needed for navigating the real world in English. So make sure you're following us so you don't miss that next deep dive, titled How to Handle Phone Calls in English.
And as we finish up today, just remember that core idea. Learning English can genuinely be integrated into activities you enjoy. It doesn't always have to feel like work. With these methods we've discussed, you now have a way to turn your relaxation time with movies and TV into really productive, focused learning time that targets those key challenges of understanding fast speech and speaking more naturally.
So go grab that remote, pick a show using that 50-70% rule, and start experimenting with these techniques today. Think of your favorite characters that are waiting to be your personal language tutors.
Exactly. See you next time for our deep dive on phone calls. Until then, keep watching, keep listening, keep practicing, and enjoy the process.